Expressive lines are lines that show some sort of emotion or energy or basically transform what you're looking at. So in this case, we're just going to start with the basics. You have a flat piece of paper and you want to use lines to transform it so it looks like something else without actually drawing an object. So this is going to be kind of like some advanced doodling techniques. So we'll take the elements of line and use that to create a change of depth or space on a paper, how you can make it look like it's curved and folding in on itself. Using a pencil, draw 3 shapes. They could be wavy, organic, or more geometric. I don't even think you need to use a ruler. Overlap them, but don't get too crazy. You want them to overlap enough so it's interesting, but not too much that it's too complicated. Then using a pen, start filling in one of the sections with lines. Keep these lines relatively straight and then get them as close together as you can. But don't bother using a ruler. Just kind of aim for the straightest line you can draw. Then when you're moving into your next section, you're going to continue each line, but in a different direction. It doesn't have to be in opposite direction, and they don't have to be perfectly straight. You can see that I'm starting to curve my lines as I move from one to the other. And all of this will vary depending on the shapes that you create. You might end up with some awkward areas. You can go from the point of one of the lines and create more lines further out to fill in any empty areas. Continue this process in the rest of the sections or other shapes that you created with your overlapping original shapes. You can curve your lines or make them slightly wavier. You can make them pinch in at the sides or bubble out. What should you do if you make a mistake? Well, don't worry, it doesn't matter, because you can just make the lines closer together so they pinch in, so they look like they're getting further away or curving into another space. So just add some more lines in there. Don't worry if you make a mistake, just make it work. See what you can do to make it make sense. Continue on to the other sections that you've made and continue to change the direction or the angle or the curve of the lines, and try to make sure that they are connecting with another line as much as possible, because this will give you the coolest effect in the overall piece. At some point you might realize that you have like a big empty area that's kind of boring. Feel free to go ahead and add some more shapes. Those shapes could be further colored in with more lines, or they can be left as negative space, empty white space. See how I pinch in some of the lines going into corners or creases? That helps create some sense of depth or angles. You can even create more sense of depth by adding a bit of thicker lines as they intersect into some of the other lines. So they look like they're folding in on each other, kind of like the mistake area from earlier. Now, it might be helpful to use different pens, like these Micron pens that have different thicknesses, rather than just using a regular pen at this point, because it'll go a little faster and be a little bit easier for you to thicken up some of those lines. Now, Micron pens, as the numbers go larger, the size of the tip changes. You can see in this section, simply by adding a bit of a darker end to each of the points in these lines, that it gives a sense of depth, like it's going into a little crevice. When you get to this point, you may see that you need to clean up some areas or add more lines into areas that look a little empty, and just go back in and add some lines. So try to make sure that they connect into another line, or they sort of pinch in to connect with the point of one of the lines that other lines are connected to. Another thing you can do is use a broader tip marker to create an outline. I would just do this on the very outside shape of your design. You could even continue this design outward to the corners of the edge of the paper if you wanted to. It doesn't have to be a floating isolated shape. It's all expressive. It's all up to you on what you want to do. You can make some of these outlines a little bit thicker. Don't worry about them being perfect, because you can just make some areas a little wider than others. Now I'm just going in and adding a few more lines to help fill in the shape and make it a little bit more interesting. What do you think?